Cece, are you here to speak for the public hearing? Hi, Colin.
That room looks so empty.
Yep.
It's kind of funny, actually. I guess that's the hot seat, John.
That's just in case somebody shows up in person.
Looks like the electric chair.
Oh, stop. My God.
I could probably decorate it like that. Still got 1 minute.
How many people do we have, Nancy?
We have 1, 2, 4. We have 4. 5 with Colin rejoining.
So we technically have a quorum, but maybe we should wait a minute or two.
That is your call.
Somehow I managed to join twice last time. I'm not sure how that happened, but maybe because I missed last
You're like,
time.
are you from?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you from Chicago or something? Isn't that where they have 2 people, dead people voting or something? Voting twice or something like that?
Not called the Windy City because of the weather. Let's just put it that way.
The guests that looks like a really empty spot there.
Chair.
All right, well,
I believe we have everyone.
okay, perfect. All right, then I will call the June 22nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. The first item of business is to call the roll to establish a quorum. Nancy, could you do that, please?
Certainly. Kate Townley.
Sure. And Nancy, I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can't figure out my microphone.
Is that just me?
Nancy,
No.
I think you
No,
need
I
to
can't hear her.
turn up your microphone or something.
Yeah, it's universal.
Oh, technically. Okay, is that better?
It's a little echoey and kind of sounds like some cars driving by in the background.
It's better now.
Better now?
Yes.
Oh, then the cars came back.
Change where your speaker, your microphone's pointing to, it's probably pointing to your laptop instead of the monitor.
Okay. Sorry, guys. How is that?
Not too
Uh,
good.
Me,
Better?
not too good? Oh,
No?
Marginally.
Barely.
Right, what about now?
I think it's workable, Nancy, but it's not optimal.
Okay, I've selected all the different mics I have.
Which is better, yeah?
That's a lot louder, whatever you just did.
Okay, let's go with that. Sorry about that. Kate, tell me.
It sounds like we're on an aircraft carrier.
Sorry, guys. Meg Donaldson,
Here.
Alan Haggerty,
Here.
Michelle, excuse me, Judy Brown.
here,
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Kate Fuller.
Who?
I thought Kate came in. Kate Fuller. Oh, hold on, I'm gonna go in. Diane Rapowski.
Sorry, I lost audio. Are we taking roll or are we working on the last week's notes?
No, taking roll call. Just call them.
I'm here.
Thank you, Kate Fuller. Ross here. Mara Atkin.
Here.
Carl Adams.
Sure.
And Chair.
here.
Here, I had been locked out in limbo and I tried to email the whole group to get someone to upgrade me, but I didn't know how to reach anyone. Sorry.
You were trying to trick us with your different email address. It says Kate Fisher instead of,
Yeah, it doesn't usually ask me for my email. It usually knows, so that must have been why.
That happened to me as well.
everyone's got changes going on.
Okay, so Nancy, did you get everybody? And do we have a quorum?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, you have your quorum.
Okay, you're still trying to figure out the microphone issue, I'm guessing. Okay, so now call for, I need a motion to approve the minutes of June 8th.
Full motion.
Second.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, Nancy, could you call for approval of the minutes, please? Without the traffic in the background?
Sorry, we're working on it. Kate Townley,
Yes.
Meg Donaldson,
Yes.
Colin Haggerty, Diane Lepowski,
Yes.
Atkins,
Yes.
Carl Adams,
Yes.
Chair Austin.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion
you're
passes.
welcome. Great, thank you. Okay, now we're going to the public forum, and this is an opportunity for the public to address the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding items not, well, we have a public, so it's, I'm just reading this and that's not quite right. So it's to public hearing for case 2021-003, amendments to Title 16. Do we have any members of the public online?
Nancy, I think you're muted.
Guess, would it
He's
be
holding her finger up.
potential? I probably can't use like a chat feature or anything like that. So it doesn't actually hear. Never mind.
You have to open the public hearing, Michelle.
Yes, we do. I believe.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So we're going to have public forum for any items that were not related to the public hearing, but we don't have any public present. Is that correct?
Yes, so we have moved on to the public hearing for case 2021-003, amendments to Title 16.
Speak.
So that was the clarification. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for your patience. So we do have a topic on the agenda for just public forum, as Kate said. Are you skipping that, Chair, and going directly into opening the public hearing? We do have 6 people in our
Oh,
for our public. I
Oh.
have not checked with them to see if they're here for the public hearing or another matter. How would you like to proceed?
oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought we didn't have anybody online from the
Okay.
public. So let's go back and let's open the public forum. And this is an opportunity for the members of the public to address items not on the agenda. And we can ask questions for clarification, but there won't be any ongoing dialogue. So Nancy, do you want to, you've got a screen with all of these folks. Do you want to ask them what they're here for?
Yes,
Or
I will.
who wants to talk about public forum?
So for call-in user number 1, do you wish to speak on a topic other than the public hearings? Okay. You need to unmute. Okay.
Because they're calling in, is there a way for you to unmute them just to confirm, Nancy?
It just lets me ask them to unmute.
Okay.
I've allowed them to speak. So moving on to the next one, I have a call-in. Are you here to speak on an item other than the public hearing? Okay. I don't know why they're not unmuted.
I don't think that's me, just so you know.
No, he's down here.
There's another column.
There's another call-in, and the caller-in user, they're not unmuting. So I have a phone number of ending in 9401. If you can unmute and let us know if you're here to speak on a topic other than the public hearing, or if you're here to talk on the public hearing. Okay. I now have a CC. Could you unmute and let us know if you're here to speak on the public hearing or a different topic? Moving on to Joanne Hill. Do you wish to speak to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
This is my first meeting I've ever attended, and I'm not sure what the number is that you were talking about. I'm assuming it's about the city hall. Is that correct?
That'll be for the public hearing. So this is a different time for public comment on other matters. So I can call on you again during the public hearing to see if you wish to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And we have a Neil, if you wish to speak on a topic other than the city center text amendments. Or do you wish to speak during the public hearing? If you could unmute and let us know, please. That's all I have.
Okay.
I will call on
We can always ask. We can always ask later if people would like to speak, just in general to us, so. Okay, hearing, nobody wants to speak from the public on the public forum. Let's move forward to the public hearings. Nancy, do I need a motion to open the case or not?
Yes, you do. In a second.
Okay, so I need, okay, wait a second, okay.
I will move to open the public hearing on case number 2021-003.
Thank you.
I
Is
second.
there a second?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Ms. Townley,
then,
Yes.
Ms. Donaldson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggerty,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller,
Yes.
Ms. Lepowski,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
yes,
Public hearing is open.
okay. So I would like to call on, is it John I'm supposed to call upon to introduce the case?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm calling on John Vogelrell to introduce the case and enter any exhibits.
John, if you raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and position with the city.
John Voboril, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission members. I'm very privileged this evening to present to you the staff report for case number 2021-003, Title 16 Unified Development Code text amendments and Inglewood Transit Station Area Specific Plan adoption. We have, because this is virtual, we have decided to give you a PowerPoint. We thought it might be a little bit boring just to watch a little screen of me for a long time. So I'm going to start sharing the screen. Everybody see the screen?
I had the, oh, there it goes again. I was gonna say, we lost it for a second, but I can see the presentation now. Now I don't.
I'm seeing a strange message that says screen sharing has stopped because the external display is disconnected. Try again. Are you seeing anything?
Yes, sir. We got you now.
Back, John.
It doesn't like when I try to duplicate the thing. Let me try it again.
Or is it when you go to a presentation mode, does it kick you out?
Yeah.
That looks good.
Do you see the black one? Are you seeing the presenter or the full screen?
Full screen, it looks good.
Okay, I'll go with that. All right, I have here with me proof of publication for the public hearing published in Inglewood Herald on June 10th. The public hearing was also published on the city's website June 2nd through today, June 22nd. And a mailing was mailed out to all property owners and addresses within 1,000 feet of the subject area the week of June 7th and 11th. Community Development Department staff requests that the Planning and Zoning Commission review, take public testimony on, and forward to City Council a favorable recommendation for adoption of proposed amendments to Title 16 of the Unified Development Code and the adoption of the Inglewood TSA specific plan in support of the city's redevelopment efforts for the city center Inglewood Station area. Tonight's agenda, basically, we will start off with a staff oral report. We will then move into public testimony. Then it will move back to the commissioners for an opportunity to voice areas of concern for staff. And then we finally request that the P&Z make a motion to continue the public hearing to July 7th, 2021. Staff recommends to the Planning and Zoning Commission the following findings of fact and motions pending deliberations by the Commission concerning case number 2021-003, Title 16 Unified Development Code text amendments and Inglewood Transit Station area specific plan adoption. That case number 2021-003 was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing by the City of Inglewood Community Development Department. That notice of the public hearing was published in the Inglewood Herald on June 10th, and that notice was provided to the Inglewood City Clerk for publishing on the city's website between the dates of June 2nd and June 22nd. That notification letters were sent out to all property owners and addresses within 1,000 feet of the proposed city center base rezoning area and the proposed Inglewood TSA overlay district area the week of June 7-11. That Inglewood Community Development Department staff held 7 Planning and Zoning Commission study sessions on the proposed Title 16 UDC text amendments and regulatory parameters for a new transit station area overlay district. That the proposed Inglewood TSA specific plan establishes a specific plan vision, regulating plan, circulation design, built form design, landscape and open space design, and plan implementation for the purpose of guiding and regulating infill redevelopment within the Inglewood TSA specific plan overlay district. That the proposed Title 16 UDC text amendments and the Inglewood TSA specific plan conform to the vision, goals, and objectives outlined in Inglewood Forward and the Downtown Development Authority's draft Inglewood Downtown Plan. And finally, that the proposed Title 16 UDC text amendments and the Inglewood TSA specific plan be forwarded to City Council with a favorable recommendation for adoption as part of the Title 16 of the Unified Development Code. I suppose I should have been driving here. All right, let's go. Let's talk about previous commission action. We began our series of study sessions on October 20th. On that session, Dan Parema visited Planning and Zoning Commission and gave a rundown of his previous October 12th City Council discussion. He talked about the proposed rezoning strategy and especially about the preliminary agreements that had been developed between SKB, LNR Partners, and the city. That was followed up by a session of 4 separate study sessions. First off, November 17th, 2020, followed by January 5th, and then January 20th and February 2nd, 2021. And those study sessions focused heavily on looking at the necessary MUB1 text amendments that would be needed to support the vision for the redevelopment at City Center, as well as a heavy dose of TSA development intensity regulations that would form the meat and potatoes of the Inglewood specific plan. On March 2nd, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission chose to close the study session series and began the process of scheduling a neighborhood meeting, which took place on April 27th. And then on June 8th, 2021, the community development staff was able to present Planning and Zoning Commission with drafts of the Title 16 UDC text amendments and the Inglewood TSA specific plan document. Based on feedback from that particular June 8th study session, a number of changes were made by staff to the two documents, the text amendment, black lines, as well as the specific plan document. The first change was to the Title 16 UDC amendments, and we added this section on basically adding an advisory specific plan design review committee. That is under section 16.21, administrative and review roles. Paragraph E, advisory specific plan design review committee. Section 1 states city council may elect to appoint an ad hoc advisory specific plan design review committee consisting of 1 city council member and 1 planning and zoning commission member on a rotational per project basis, and 1 or more architectural design professionals recommended by the community development department to serve as an advisory specific plan design review committee for a specific plan site development plan review in order to determine compliance with specific plan design standards and guidelines. Part 2, the advisory specific plan design review committee will review the applicant's specific plan site development plans, including the applicant's specific plan design standards and guidelines report. Based upon its review, the advisory specific plan design review committee shall make recommendations to the city manager or designate, including but not limited to recommendations concerning compliance with specific plan design standards and guidelines, conditions of approval, or whether waiver of certain guidelines are justified. And number 3, the specific plan design review committee is an informal, advisory, and consultative body whose determinations and recommendations are not binding upon the city manager or designee. In regards to changes to the actual Inglewood TSA specific plan document under part 5.5 landscape plant materials principles, number 1, we have made the following changes. Respect the native Colorado environment and low water use requirements in the landscape materials selected, with a preference for native forbs and grasses, while also being mindful of seasonal qualities to ensure a year-round active living landscape environment. And then under design standard number 5, all areas utilizing turf shall be sodded and seeded, with the exception of upcoming cultivars currently available in plug form only. And then I just want to mention that there was also a request about making community gardens an allowable use in MUB1. And I just want to, we went and looked at that, and we found that for community gardens, all of any district that is a potential land use in was marked as a C, which is a conditional use permit. And my knowledge of our code rewrite had told me that that's probably something that that the planning manager would like to be changed. Probably is trying to get away from some of these conditional use permits. And so rather than put an A for allowed with all these other C's for all the other districts, or put another C, I consulted with the planning manager and we decided that we would wait till the actual code rewrite to take that particular issue on. Some other things that came up in the June 8th study session were some questions about the development review process and the processes for major amendments and minor amendments. And so I wanted to reiterate a little bit more about how those things work and how they're conceived. So for major amendments, these are spelled out in the text of the black line text amendments. And those include major relocations of buildings, lot lines, right-of-ways, and easements, changes to established land uses or building types, increases in building height in areas where negotiation is not allowed, increases in maximum allowed residential density by more than 10%, introducing new allowed land uses that are not allowed by the base zone district, and reduction in established residential and commercial parking range negotiation parameters. And any other types of amendments that are not included in that list would be considered minor amendments. Now, the major amendment process follows the traditional rezoning and amendment process, including neighborhood meeting, completion of staff plan review and report, Planning and Zoning Commission plan review and public hearing, and City Council plan review, public hearing, and final approval. With the minor amendment process, this is strictly administrative. It would include the completion of a staff plan review and report and final record of decision. And these materials would be made available to the Planning and Zoning Commission on an informational basis. And then there was also questions about infrastructure planning. As I reiterated through the June 8th study session, there's a lot of things with regard to the infrastructure that have not been figured out yet, and that right now we kind of have a more conceptual idea of these improvements, and that we will need to be working on some of these in more detail about infrastructure here at City Center and then beyond those areas as well. And we are looking to do a grant with Dr. Cog to handle some of that. Traditionally, these types of processes dealing with infrastructure are not quite set in stone in terms of what public processes are required. Land use and zoning questions are very clear in state statutes of what the process follows, that there's a Planning and Zoning Commission hearing and a City Council hearing and a vote. But with infrastructure, that's kind of more of a gray area. So typically, we do typically look to do public processes, even though they're not speculated or stipulated in any kind of city policies or documents or state statutes. But it is more discretionary. It's most critical usually at the conceptual level. So some of the examples that we've done in the past are the Inglewood Light Rail Stationary Master Plan and the Inglewood Light Rail Corridor Next Step Studies and the Walk and Wheel Master Plan. In regards to the Walk and Wheel Master Plan, we had that involvement with Planning and Zoning Commission. We also had a public hearing with the Planning Commission, and then it went on to City Council for their public hearing and adoption by resolution. But certain recent projects that came out of that document that called for bike lanes on Dartmouth Avenue and Oxford Avenue, we decided that we didn't feel that there was a real compelling need to have a public process for those. We felt that it was actually more urgent to actually try to get these projects done, especially on Dartmouth Avenue. It was we've had so many complaints about that street. And so we thought our design that we're looking at isn't taking away parking. It's not. And so we thought that it's a no-brainer just to go ahead and do this plan, the design of it, without a public process. So that's kind of the example that I would give between when we decide, when in the more conceptual, bigger picture point of the project, we are definitely going to be looking for public involvement and Planning and Zoning Commission involvement and public hearings processes. But when it gets more into the design nitty-gritty, we're probably not going to be doing that, but we will be being able, once we do figure out the details of these types of design details, we do want to incorporate them into our plan. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Poremba, who will give, once again, reiterate the background case for rezoning. And so at this time, I would ask Nancy to swear in Dan Poremba.
Dan, if you'd raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I do.
Please state your name and position with the city, please.
Dan Poremba, Chief Redevelopment Officer, Community Development Department. Okay. For purposes of the public hearing on the rezoning, just really wanted to take a few minutes and quickly put the rezoning back in the context of the redevelopment aspects, the need for it, where we're headed strategy-wise, et cetera. And so I won't take too much time on this. You know, in terms of recent events and trends, we've talked about the fact that over the last 20 years, shopping preferences have changed dramatically towards online activity. City Center, based on its original design and zoning, does not have enough density or mix of uses to keep it viable. And then one of the big factors that's come up is many new TOD locations have become available both locally and nationally for development. And that's where most of the development activity is actually taking place, is at or adjacent to TOD projects. We mentioned the fact that vacancies have increased dramatically in City Center. For example, the 24-hour fitness was vacated earlier last year, and then Office Depot closed as well. And most recently, I should say most recently Office Depot. So, you know, the big picture strategy is to make City Center zoning as comparable, as competitive as it can possibly be to what those stakeholders we want to attract are seeing elsewhere. And so those participants include a lineup of vertical developers, anchor tenants, investors, lenders, hotel operators, and a variety of others. And the key is they need to know that the zoning at City Center is comparable to what they're looking at other places. And typically what they'll look at is height, density, parking, other design elements, and importantly, the process, timing, and risks of specific project approvals. So I just wanted to also put in a plug for this advisory committee approach that John and the planning team here have come up with in response to your stated concerns. All these players, participants will be used to seeing something like that, and they'll have a certain comfort level with that, a higher comfort level than, you know, the usual or historic process of sending something back to City Council. And then just mentioning that underneath our big rezoning strategy is really to make sure that we support two redevelopment tactics, and that's the preliminary development agreement with SKB and the framework agreement with LNR. John, next slide. And here, just some restatement of the redevelopment goals. We really need to reverse the negative impacts of the downward trending, dated, low density, retail focus part of City Center. We want to add hotel, office, residential uses, and really take advantage of the underdeveloped area that's quickly losing its financial sustainability. We have a great opportunity to use the redevelopment to support the revitalization of the entire downtown area in tandem with the new Inglewood Downtown Development Authority. And, you know, for the city financially, we want to increase sales and property taxes and try to monetize the value of the city's various property interests in City Center. And, you know, a big part of this is retaining and attracting Inglewood employers, residents, retailers, restaurants, and the usual lineup of participants in mixed-use projects. John?
John, John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but may I address Michael in our public? I see your raised hand. Once staff is done doing their presentation, we will be asking for input from the public. So I will call on you at that time.
Thanks, Nancy. On the preliminary development agreement, that's the agreement that pertains to SKB, which is the master developer that was selected by city council following a year-long competitive procurement process. And they are specifically dealing with all the property in blue on this site plan. And we are working towards overall redevelopment plan and master development agreement. Due to the delays caused by COVID, that agreement was extended a couple months ago, and it's now currently terminates or expires in late in the year, following the DDA debt authorization election in November. So that's moving forward. We had a good meeting with the SKB team. It was our first in-person meeting today in 15 months at the Tribal Architects offices, and it went really well. It was very encouraging. Next slide, John. The property in red is the property that's controlled by L&R Partners. This was the property that was foreclosed on by the bondholders in 2018. And it was the thing that really opened the door to City Council's considerations about the necessity of redeveloping City Center. And so in some ways it was negative, but in some ways it's been, an opportunity creator for the city. And in October of last year, the City Council authorized staff to move forward with negotiating a framework agreement. We've talked about the fact that there are 3 key pieces to that agreement. One is the termination of the underlying ground lease, which now has about 54 years of term left on it. There's the rezoning of City Center, which we're focused on here. And then council's preliminary endorsement of a large multifamily project on the south half of Block C, which is where Office Depot and Harbor Freight are located. And so that agreement is about wrapped up, and we're hoping it will be presented to the City Council on July 19th. We'll present it first to the ETH board for their review and approval and recommendation to the City Council. But the good news is that that's almost done. It's a very complicated agreement, but we've kind of held, all parties to it, and it should really create a solid groundwork to go forward and create a bigger vision for larger scale redevelopment of City Center. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, John.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Basically, on this case for text amendments and the Inglewood TSA specific plan adoption, we have 3 pieces. We have the MUB1 base zone district text amendments, and those include adding visitor accommodation uses to the MUB1 zone district. Those are hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, etc. Those are not present in the MUB1 today, but by adding those uses in, we will be supporting the possibility of a hotel in either at City Center or in the larger Inglewood TSA area. Secondly, we're looking to remove the original TSA base zone district provisions and in their place adopt the TSA overlay district provisions. As you may recall, the TSA base zone district is a zone district that has never been used in the Inglewood, has never been applied to any official map changes. It was added to the current UDC slightly after 2004, and it was particularly aimed at the possibility of establishing the bait station area and helping to address redevelopment in that area. However, the bait station, light rail station, never got built due to escalating costs that the city could not afford. And so that area was never rezoned to TSA. And instead, it was eventually rezoned through PUD processes by private developers and is now being redeveloped. Secondly, the base TSA zone district is very old. It's approximately 15 years old. And there has been a lot of evolution in TOD regulatory processes and codes. And so we also felt that this TSA-based zone district is dated and is not going to be a very good fit for us in controlling development here at Inglewood Station. And so we are looking to replace those base zone district with the adoption of a more modern TOD-oriented TSA overlay district. And then finally, the third piece is the adoption of the Inglewood Transit Station Area Specific Plan document. And this is an overlay regulatory planning document that will be in addition to the underlying MUB1 base zone district. And it will contain those development intensity regulations that Planning and Zoning Commission worked hard on. Now I'd like to give you some details of the Inglewood's TSA specific plan document. It was inspired by the downtown Westminster specific plan. The city of Westminster has been for many years trying to redevelop the former Westminster Mall area, and they have struggled with that a lot. At first, they were looking to do a traditional master plan, hire a master planner to do the entire site. And they had troubles connecting their vision with the division of the various prospective master plan developers. And that probably had a lot to do with the potential of a light rail station across the street from the Westminster Mall area. But that wasn't going to see a light rail station for many, many years. And there was probably a disconnect between their visions. And so they never could come to terms with any master developer for the site. And so they finally decided they had to switch gears, and they decided we're going to act as the master developer ourselves, and we're going to develop this this downtown Westminster specific plan that we have seen that utilized in the Western United States. And we would develop our plan around that with our street layouts and what our expectations were with the buildings and the uses and the heights and all of that. And then they would go out and market those piece by piece to smaller developers who would be attracted by the fact that there is a plan in place, that they could get very quick, speedy approvals, and that something could be coming out of the ground in a rather smooth and quick fashion. And that is what we are seeing now at Westminster Mall. There's a lot of buildings that have come out of the ground there, and they are moving forward in a rapid fashion. We've also incorporated into our TSA specific plan architectural and design standards and guidelines that have been found in many Denver light rail station regulating plans. And this is also exciting for Inglewood in the fact that Inglewood has never embraced architectural standards. Typically, we do have some residential neighborhoods guidelines in our code, but they are not standards and they do not have to be adhered to. They were just simply suggestions. And so this is something that's going to take Inglewood in a much more interesting direction in terms of telling and communicating to the development community the kind of quality and the level of detail that we expect here at City Center. The Inglewood TSA specific plan is designed to be and intended to be a comprehensive, self-contained, and generally self-executing regulatory document. It is intended to be a living document that can largely be amended continuously in an administrative fashion. It covers a greater area than City Center. It covers the area also to the east, extending over to South Bannock and South Tacoma streets. And we felt that that was very important because City Center, for all purposes, was most likely too small of a development from the get-go, and really needed to be larger in terms of ensuring that there would be enough energy and dynamism in the development. And for what we've had for a long time is we've had City Center on one end and the historical downtown Broadway on the other end, with sort of like a kind of a no man's land without any kind of vision. And that hasn't worked very well. At the same time, those areas are very similar to City Center in the fact that they tend to have older big box retail developments on them. They're larger parcels, and they're also very ripe for redevelopment as well. And finally, the TSA specific plan has been developed around a 2-tier set of development intensity regulations based on a 1/4 mile distance from the stationary platform and a 1/2 mile stationary area from the platform. And that boundary line is on Elati Street, and which is the city center boundary. And so it allows for a greater intensity closer to the station between the station platform and Elati Street. And with that kind of tapering off a little bit beyond Elati towards the historic Broadway core. And so here is the meat and potatoes of the Inglewood TSA specific plan document. This is the development intensity regulations chart. And this is what we spent a lot of time with Planning and Zoning Commission to establish. And it encapsulates a lot of the key areas that Dan just mentioned a little bit that developers are looking for. We have established residential density minimums and maximums. We have established a maximum building height that can be negotiated higher within the 1/4 mile zone. We've also established residential parking rates for both market housing and income restricted housing. And those become those figures for market rate and income restricted are more intensive within the 1/4 mile zone and a little bit more generous in the 1/2 mile zone. And then when it comes to commercial parking, including hotel parking, office, retail parking, and restaurant parking, Planning and Zoning Commission, rather than establishing hard numbers for those, opted to take a little bit different tack and authorize staff the possibility of negotiations up to a 25% reduction within the 1/2 mile zone and up to a 50% reduction in the 1/4 mile zone from our typical automobile standards that we have today in the MUB1 zone district. The specific plan document includes the following chapters. It has a general overview section. Chapter 2 is the regulating plan. The regulating plan includes the land use and framework plan, an activated first floor plan, development intensity regulation chart, lot standards, setbacks, and minimum lineal street frontage requirements. The circulation design chapter is at this point more conceptual in nature, but it will address over time in greater detail transit connections, the connecting bus stop bays, shuttle bus route, station platform, park and ride facilities, connecting bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and internal bicycle and pedestrian network and the street network. Chapter 3 is the built form design chapter, and this focuses in on the actual building architecture and the design standards that we are expecting here at City Center. And it includes things like building massing and scale, activated edges, building materials, building fenestration and composition, building entrances, accessibility, and details such as porches, patios, stoops, canopies, shading devices, and trellises, as well as also things like balconies and railings. And then it also gets into things like solar and wind power equipment, trash and recycling areas, and utility spaces and mechanical equipment and parking structures. Chapter 5 is landscape and open space design, including a general requirements section, as well as sections on the Festival Street Plaza and Inglewood Parkway, and details of standards and guidelines for plant materials, hardscape components, site furnishings, lighting, screening, fencing, walls, and railings. And finally, the last chapter deals with implementation. It refers back to the Unified Development Code, relationship to plans, also plans such as the comprehensive plan and the Downtown Matters plan. Talks a little bit about the development review process. It mentions variances and impact fees and cost recovery. The Text amendments in Inglewood TSA specific plan are in conformance with the comprehensive plan Inglewood Forward. The vision of the Inglewood TSA specific plan begins with Inglewood Forward, the 2016 Inglewood Comprehensive Plan. The vision outlined in the comp plan is complemented by the vision laid out in the recently completed Inglewood Downtown Matters Plan of Development. In regards to goals or strategies that are contained in the Inglewood Station Downtown Neighborhood Assessment Area, in turn for off-Broadway corridor, we have encouraged more housing in and around downtown and Inglewood City Center by creating a minimum height and density. A greater critical mass of residents, including households that are not in family-raising years, can support more retail and entertainment businesses, and their presence contributes to a lively street-level activity. And secondly, develop a financing district such as the Downtown Development Authority. Combination of TIF capability and mill levy without blight or eminent domain is ideal. In regards to Inglewood Station City Center area, strengthen the retail street at City Center by improving visual access from both Hampton Avenue and Inglewood Station and adding additional supportive uses. Particularly pursue technology, entertainment, health, and pet-related retailers that are expanding and highly desirable to Inglewood's demographic groups. Create a master plan for Inglewood City Center and downtown that looks to reconfigure vehicle access to transit and parking to increase users' exposure to retail and enhance the streetscape. Attract a retail anchor with appropriate incentives that counterbalances the historic downtown. And finally, if city functions and offices are relocated, strive to place them in a more central position between city center and downtown, reinforcing the link between the two. And similarly, the Downtown Matters Plan of Development features similar goals and statements regarding economy and jobs, public space enhancements and placemaking, mobility and transportation, and land use. At this time, that concludes my staff presentation on this case. And now we will move to public testimony. And I just want to first enter for the record that we have received a letter from Pamela Beets, resident of Cushing Park, and this letter has been distributed to planning and zoning commissioners. And this letter is basically opposed to the rezoning of City Center Inglewood and adoption of the TSA specific plan overlay. And at this time, the P&Z chair will be able to call real-time participants to testify.
Thank you, John. And Dan, Nancy, I'm going to need your assistance in this. So if you could, you could call on people for me, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, I do want to state for the record, there is no one at Inglewood Civic Center to testify in person. So everyone is.
Yes.
So call in user 1. If you'd like to unmute, this is your time. You have 3 minutes to make a statement for the Planning and Zoning Commission if you wish, but you would need to unmute. Okay. I have Colin again. Do you wish to address the Planning and Zoning Commission? If so, please unmute. Okay. Joanne Hill, if you will unmute, if you wish to speak, this is your time to do so.
Thank you. I'm very new to this, and I actually just heard about this through the neighborhood grapevine today. I do have a few questions, and I'm just wondering how many property owners responded to your survey?
I would point out this is, as the chair mentioned earlier, this is a time for you to address the Planning and Zoning Commission. They cannot answer questions or engage in a dialogue with you.
I guess that would kind of go hand in hand because I just don't know much about this. I probably need to have more information. I guess I'll probably end my conversation because if I can't have questions answered, there's probably no point.
I can certainly give you the email for our planner, John Bobo, if you'd like to email him some questions.
Sure.
Okay, it's JV.
I'd like to mention too that we will be extending this public hearing to July 7th. Is that correct, Nancy?
That is your call, the commissioners.
Right, we are at least thinking about extending this public forum to have another meeting, so you might be able to help participate then.
Okay. Would you like his email, Ms. Hill, or would you like to come back on July 7th?
Like the email.
Okay, so it's J, if you can see John's name on there, it's J Voboril, V as in Victor, O, B as in boy, ORIL at englewoodco.gov.
Is he someone I could call rather than typing out a formal email? Will I get some answers, or how does that work?
My office phone number is 303 783 6820.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. I'm going to try call in user number 1. I see your hand, but you will need to unmute yourself. We're not hearing you if you're speaking. Okay, I'm going to go back to Colin again and see if Colin is wishing to address the commission. If so, you will also need to unmute. Okay, moving on to Neil. Do you wish to address the Planning and Zoning Commission? If so, you will need to unmute. Okay, Michael, we're moving on to you. You have your hand up. I've just given you the ability to speak, but you will need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. First of all,
oh, I'm sorry, Michael. I do have to swear you in. I should have done that with Joanne. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Are you able to turn your video on or no?
I can't see it on my screen. I'm looking at someone else's screen, so I don't know.
Oh, that's no problem. I'll just read it to you. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you please state your address? Oh, your full name and address. I'm sorry.
Michael Feely. I'm the owner of Mick Mullins Irish Bar, 3467 South Broadway, Englewood,
Thank you.
Colorado.
Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes.
First of all, we're in favor of some of the rezoning stuff. Yes, we support a downtown development plan. Not necessarily particularly the plan that you have presented. I have concerns that there may not have been much of an impact study in terms of the businesses on the east end of the area, such as myself and the rest of us over here on Broadway. I think that there's not really an awful lot to differentiate the current plan from multiple other plans attached to light rail developments. You know, if we're putting hotels there, why on earth would people get off if it's just a train station? We don't offer any of the benefits of, say, Denver with Mile High Stadium or Pepsi Center, sorry, the Ball Arena now. And in terms of what is attractive to why should I get off of the train here? Just looking at some of the further details there, I have real concerns about 125 units per acre. Where are all those people's dogs going to defecate or children going to play with all that green space that you left out? And I would like to take the opportunity to present an alternative idea that includes retail, hotel, hospitality, and all of those things, as well as a rooftop stadium or or park. If there's a way that I can share an alternative proposal or document, I'm happy to do so. I have access to it right now, but I think that there's a way to get all of the things done that the city wants, that the developers want, but also that the youth and citizens of Englewood might want today and tomorrow or 10 years down the line. We're not developing anything different with this plan that anyone else isn't developing, and Denver Public Schools isn't building new classrooms on new land at a premium. It's developing on free land that it already owns. Therefore, all of the playing fields are going. If we want a high value product that other people want, especially in the Denver metro, it's green space. We have to find a way to do it that we can include or incorporate all of those things that also provide access to green space. And frankly, I think that we should revisit some of our objectives, because more retail doesn't really seem to me beneficial to those of us at this end of the project. And I don't really see it being beneficial to the youth of Englewood 20 years down the road.
Thank you. Moving on to Josh Goldstein. Mr. Goldstein, do you wish to address the commission?
Oh, I was just a fly on the wall.
That's okay. If you don't wish to speak, that's fine.
Well, I met with John Boberil and Dan Paremba today, and I had a proposal as well. But I'd like to see the Civic Center adaptively reused. But as it relates, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I have to swear you in. I apologize.
Sure.
So do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
Josh Goldstein, 1475 Delgany Street, Denver, Colorado.
Okay, you have 3 minutes if you wish.
Yep, it'll just be quick. I met with the folks on the development team and I appreciated their time. In my proposal, I agree with the previous caller that green space is important, and I had a proposal that showed a big plaza and green space around the current Civic Center building. Whether or not that building is kept, I do think green space is important. It's good to have exterior areas for people to gather, and there's a lot of interesting topography on the site, especially on the south side. And in the zoning diagram that I saw, there was very little green space, and it looks almost like a median. It's along the main Inglewood Parkway there, but it would be great to see a little bit more green space. So I don't really have any specific comments. I would have if we didn't have that meeting earlier today. So thanks, John and Dan, for hosting me. I was just going to be a fly on the wall tonight, but thank you.
Thank you. Chair, if you will indulge me, I'd like to go back through the other ones to see if they, just one last time.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, so calling user number 1, I still see your hand is up. If you wish to address the commission, we would need you to unmute so we could hear you.
I make one suggestion. I did find that if you press *6, that will unmute you if you are on a phone.
Oh, thank you, Phil.
If that helps.
Okay, Colin? Okay,
yes.
Thank you so much. I hope that helped.
Yes, thank you. That did help.
Okay, I do need to swear you in, please.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I do.
Would you please state your name and address?
Yes, this is Maureen White, and I live in the 3200 block of Grand Street. So I have just 3 comments. I agree with what Pam Beat sent in an email. I think the redevelopment of the city center in the downtown area is going to be affecting all residents of Englewood in one way or another. And for instance, the green space mentioned, a lot of people took part in the concerts that were held down there, and that took a pretty good sized area to do that in. So I think a much better reach out needs to be done. And curiously, maybe I've missed it, but I've heard no formal mention of where the city offices, the library, where is all that the courts, where's that going to be relocated to? I've heard a rumor that Denny Miller Field could be used that way. I hope not. So I think we have a right to know, and that's part of the plan. I had a realtor tell me, don't move till, or don't put your house up for sale till you know where you're moving, till you know where you're moving. So I think that should apply here too. And maybe community development and some people in city government know where this will be moved to, but the public has a right to know too. And I'm wondering why Josh Goldstein's wonderful research and recommendations were not presented at any time that I could find. And many citizens responded in favor to what he was proposing, and it was very transparent. So I think we need to get back to making all this more transparent. And when will Planning and Zoning be meeting in person again? That's all. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. White.
Pending approval by the commission to meet again on July 7th.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear you, Chair Austin.
Oh, I said pending approval by the commission this evening, we will be extending this public forum to July 7th.
Okay. And that is everyone, unless Colin wishes to unmute. One last time, calling for Colin if he wishes to speak. Okay, Chair, that's all we have.
Okay, now we could move on to questions to be asked by the commission members. Remember, this is not a time for dialogue. This is just questions for staff. So I will call upon Nancy's help again to find out who's raising their hands. I see Kate Townley.
Oops, sorry. Yes, Kate. I just saw her hand. Thank you.
Shut the door so the dog doesn't start barking. Thank you. I have a couple questions. And so Michelle, just let me know if you want me to ask all of them or just one. I think I only have two. One of them has to do with the Inglewood TSA Special Area Plan Design Review Committee. And I was just wondering, do we have precedent for other committees that include a city council member and a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, even in just an advisory role? And I'm wondering if that could create any kind of issue. So I didn't know if Dugan or anyone had any input on that. I'm all for having a review committee. I just didn't know if that particular makeup of a committee would create any kind of issue. And my other question is sort of, so there is a redevelopment plan, which is kind of more around who owns what and who's going to own what and switching properties around. Then there's this rezoning, which is different than like a PUD rezoning, in that normally that would come forward with like a site development plan and a lot more detail about what the site would look like. This would be kind of, in my mind, is to provide the basis for someone to come forward with a redevelopment plan based on new zoning. So I just didn't know if you could kind of clarify that, and maybe that's why we're not seeing full plans for what the site could look like. Those are my two.
John?
So regarding the design review committee, basically the most interesting one that I found locally was for Arvada, in Old Town Arvada. And as I recall, there was no city council member on that committee. It was purely advisory. But we kind of, the brain trust of the community development department thought that we might want to, that might be an issue, that there may be a desire from city council as well as P&Z to be more involved in some of the process. of going over and determining whether the proposed site plan was indeed in compliance with the standards and guidelines of the specific plan. And so that's where we came down upon. It's like we felt that city council might be wanted to be involved, and maybe planning and zoning commission does too. And we thought, but we wanted to keep the board small, and so we came up with the rotational idea where they would take turns for various projects. Regarding the redevelopment plan, there's a redevelopment plan that Dan has explained about SKB and LNR and how they might swap properties. And there's a rezoning plan, and it is different than PUD in the fact that this is really, the city is being a major driver in this. In fact, actually, I would say the city is the major driver in the fact that the city was the one who put out the RFQ and the RFP for bringing on a preferred master developer, which is what SKB is. And so the city is really in the position of making this, the redevelopment go forward, and is actively, assertively looking for partners. And that's very different than a PUD process. A lot of times, most of your PUD processes are being driven by developers who apply and want to do something, and the city is just merely the regulator. So yes, it is different in that fact, and we are in a different position in the fact that in order to make these agreements work, we need to visit the rezoning sooner rather than later. And so that's what we're doing now. And then we expect later on, when the zoning is in place and some of these real estate deals can happen, that then people will be able to come forward with actual site development plans. And so it is a much different process than we are typically used to here in England.
Judy?
First of all, thank you for making the updates that you did based on our input. So my question is also about the design review committee. So it says on here that city council may elect to create this design review committee. Is that the way I understand it? What triggers this design review committee? Is every time that there is a site plan that's coming forward, will someone notify city council and then they will make a decision if they want to create this advisory group? Is that sort of how I'm very, as you know from the last meeting, very process oriented. I'm trying to understand how this unfolds. So help me understand, do we always have an advisory committee for every site plan? What will trigger that creation of that committee?
So because we haven't vetted this necessarily with council, we've kind of hedged our bets a little bit. And so we've said they may, if council decides to do that, then that'll be that we've kind of hedged it in the fact that maybe they decide not to do it. But we think they probably will want to do that. And so we've kind of said maybe that they can do this if they elect to. And also at the same time, we also are looking to keep this committee as something a little bit different than other city committees. Most of city committees tend to be formal committees that are enshrined in codes in the charter, such as this commission or the England Transportation Committee. But we're really thinking that this may not be a permanent committee, and that it must be served the will of the council. And so we have kept it as more of an advisory and an ad hoc status to it, so that if council decides for whatever reason that they tried it out and they decided we decide that we don't want to continue with that, then that it's really at the discretion of city council, whether it's their decision to go forward with this ad hoc committee. And it's also their purview to end it at any time.
Just one more clarifying question, but will, say they decide that this is a good idea, will you as staff notify them when you get a new site plan? And then they will make a decision whether or not it warrants a committee. Is that correct?
I'm thinking most likely that it won't be on a project per project basis. That I think that we'll find out quickly enough that city council will want to create that committee. And then we will, as staff, assume that that committee stands in place until they tell us no. So we will assume that every project, if council makes that decision to have an advisory ad hoc committee, that every project will go through that process until
Okay.
council
It does,
says
sorry to interrupt. It does say in the wording though that recommended, where was it? Oh yeah. On a rotational per project basis. So that was my inference, was that every project, a committee would need to be brought together. But you're saying it will be a standing committee until council says we don't need it anymore.
yes, but at the same point, you do have a point in the fact that we wanted to have it rotate through the membership so that no one feels like that they're being left out. And so for each project, there will be a different person from council, a different planning zoning commissioner assigned to that particular project. But the committee is expected to continue, and we'll just pick different peoples each time there's a project.
Great, thank you. And if I may, Chair, can I ask one more question? In this, just to address the green space questions or comments that were brought up, I just have a quick question, and I apologize because it's not like I've looked at the MU B1 base zoning, but do we have a allowance for a certain amount of green space within that zone district now? Okay.
Yes, the MUB1 zone district requires a 10% landscaping area for each project. And so we felt that that was a standard that made sense as well for TOD. And so we opted just to stick with that as our standard in the area.
Thank you.
Diane,
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Yeah. My question, thank you again for all of the work and effort putting this together and going through it today. My question also relates to the design review committee. I think Kate brought up a very good question about whether it is advisable or preferable to include a city council member and a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But even more, another question I have is it preferable? Will it lead to a better product if this committee is so ad hoc, in the sense that, you know, if you're constantly getting different professionals and different planning members, it's going to be hard to think of it holistically, think of the whole development holistically relative to, you know, say project one comes on and we have a committee of 5 people. They have, you know, all of their comments and feedback. If you put together project number 2 and the design committee is 7 people, all different, you know, they're all going to read it differently. That's going to possibly be burdensome to the developer and the consultants preparing the documents for the developer, but also The second committee might not have the institutional knowledge of what happened in project number one. I'm just curious from your perspective if that will lead to, if the idea is that it'll lead to a richer project or series of projects, or will there possibly be some issue with continuity or thinking about all of the projects holistically?
So since we don't, this is what we are proposing is something that we haven't necessarily found looking around. It is different than what Arvada's is, and Arvada does have a more permanent membership to their committee. And so I think it is valid to say that there could be some issues with that you are alluding to, that maybe it doesn't run quite so smoothly when you keep changing people.
Hey, John, if I might, let me just comment on that. I've had a long experience dealing with design review committees in various jurisdictions, and I think this can work. One of the things that we haven't stressed too much here is that it's envisioned that there would be an on-call design professional that would facilitate every meeting, so that the three members would come together. You know, city council would be notified, the planning and zoning commission would be notified. They'd each send up their next member. They meet with the staff, and this design professional would really facilitate a standardized kind of approach. And the idea would be to really, run through the same dialogue, the same consideration every meeting, even with the new people rotating in and then rotating out. So that I think it could, address your concerns about the potential for chaos, if you will. I think it can work, and it can keep, I think, some connectivity to the commission as well as the council, and kind of bring in, a couple new sets of fresh eyes on every project. So it's a bit experimental, but I think the size of it, the fact that they're advisory, and the fact that there's a design professional involved, and the same, hopefully, design professional involved for considerable periods of time, really should help address some of those concerns.
Okay.
Colin?
Great, thank you. I did have a couple questions regarding a bit of the text. One of which I think Judy might have been referring to during the last meeting about the definition of the major amendment. One of the definitions is it's a major relocation of buildings. Is there any way to maybe define that a little bit more clearly on like what actually triggers then that criteria as part of 1622 Part G? And then I guess maybe just more of a question. The figure 2.1 that showed where the activated spaces are, I think it does show a strip of green space in there, but I'm assuming that does not include the additional 10% open space that would be required on each one of those lots. And I think that might be triggering some people's thoughts of, there's no green space, there's just a small little strip in there. And so I think maybe just keeping that, for the public and for us internally, that there will be more open space, plaza space, green space than just that small strip coming down Inglewood Parkway. I think might help clarify that a little bit.
I saw the same thing, Colin. It looked like it was making Inglewood Parkway and, divided one direction into, each direction, and there was a strip of green in between. So I saw that too. John,
And I
can you
think
answer that?
having green space there is great, but I think there's going to be additional also that doesn't include everything else, is where I'm going with that. The way I interpret that, and I just want to, maybe you could clarify if that is the correct interpretation.
Okay, first I'll start with the definitions of the major amendments. The first one that says major relocation of buildings, lot lines, right-of-ways, and easements. And I think that what we need to be looking at to think about that is that these are not individuals So if there's I think you need to look at that as being all of the above to count. If it's just a relocation of a building, I mean, that's going to happen. We have buildings on the site that probably won't exist quite in the same footprint as with the new buildings. But we don't, at the same time, we're not going to be probably radically changing the easements or the right of ways or the lot lines. And so I don't think that would count. But I think what that's trying to get at is if there's a wholesale scrapping of what we have today at City Center, and we're going to shake it all up and we're going to redesign and reroute all of the street network and right of ways and change the whole site plan of what we have today. That to me is what that is calling out. It's not individuals, but it's all those things together.
And maybe I'm misreading this, John, if you can clarify. I guess I thought they're going to have to come in with a specific plan that we'll all review and that committee will review. And then the way I read that is if they want to change major relocation of buildings after that plan has been reviewed, because I think we're all in agreement that there's going to be a lot of change to what it's laid out as right now. But then after we've all seen it, everyone's agreed, approved to it. If they start moving buildings around, what causes them to have to come back and make that make it an amendment to that plan that's already been approved? And maybe I misread that. If that's the case, then that's great.
Yeah, so those things can be kind of confusing because there's amendments to the plan document itself, which is the plan, and then there's the site development process where which is kind of a different animal. I'd have to kind of go back and look at how that reads.
and I think if you could just clarify that, if you think it's the way it should be, that's great. It just seemed a little bit vague on what causes a major amendment after that plan's been reviewed and is part of the specific plan approval process that I'm referring to.
All right, I will try to have an answer for you for July 7th. And then your question about green space, yes, that figure shows that in the right of way, public green space, but that's not all the green space that will be part of the plan. Every development will have to adhere to that 10% area of landscaping as well.
Thank
you. We just don't know where that is right now.
Quick after that, John, would developers be able to essentially pool their 10% and create a larger parcel or something like that for the green space?
That's a good question. I think I'm gonna have to research that for you for July 7th as well.
Well, I'm just thinking, instead of a bunch of little pocket parks or something like that, if they could pool it and make a larger festival area or something like that. So I'm sorry to interrupt, and I didn't have my hand up. So anyway.
You're fine. You're the chair. Kate Townley is next.
Okay.
I have another green space related question. So in changing or updating the allowable uses in MUB1. Right now, park space is a permitted use within MUB1. So that wouldn't change if a developer or someone or the city wanted to develop a park within this potential new zoning district, they are allowed to do that by right. And right now, if you wanted to put in an athletic field, that's not allowed. Or if you wanted to put in entertainment, general outdoor recreation, also not allowed. Were those two, the athletic field and general outdoor recreation, considered as potential conditional or allowable uses within the area throughout the process?
The answer I would say is that we did not consider those. When we've kind of focused, I think, particularly with the MUB1 text amendments, we focused heavily on a report that Tribal Architects did for us that looked at some of the early proposals that SKB had for the city property, as well as some of the ideas that LNR was looking at. And we had them evaluate our MUB1 zone district requirements based on those what they're looking to as potential uses in the project. And so because they did not, they were not pitching athletic fields or outdoor entertainment type sporting uses, we didn't consider those as potential changes to the MUB1. They were pitching hotel use, so we did. That's what the principal land use that we did look at for changes was.
And just as a follow-up, would you foresee any sort of risk in allowing conditionally athletic fields or outdoor recreation?
I think the key risk would be that it might take up a lot of very scarce space, and then we wouldn't have enough density to make the development work.
Judy?
A request, John, for July 7th, when you're in response to Kate's question about the design review committee, or I'm sorry, this was actually Collins about the amendment. Could you help? This would help me tremendously. Could you give an example of exactly how a developer would come to you with an amendment that would be considered minor? And then also an example of a developer who comes to you with an amendment that you would consider major, like a real life example of what that I could grasp in my mind about exactly where that line is and what that would look like. That would help me. So if I had a real life example of one of the developers come in, say, that wanted to do a residential unit that meets this, falls within this specific plan. Because if I understand this right, we are not going to see site development plans. Is that correct? They are just going to go to this committee. We as planning and zoning are not going to see the site development plans. They are not going to go through the public hearing process. They're going to the committee, correct? And if that's the case, if I could understand how a real life example of a developer coming to you with something that would be considered a major and which could be considered a minor, that would help me.
We will do that.
Sure.
Was I correct that we as Planning and Zoning Commission are not going to see individual site development plans? Is that correct?
That is pretty much correct. Yeah.
Owen?
I don't want to put words in Kate's mouth, but I think she was asking if it could be a conditional use for the outdoor entertainment, not a required use, obviously. So adding, because it's in MUB2, could it be added to MUB1 also to allow for some sort of outdoor venue type of facility? And so, Kate, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I think it would be a good idea also. So maybe I'll just have it as my own opinion.
Chair, I do not see any other hands.
Do we want to, I see that
Oh,
Michael.
Diane just put his hand, her hand up.
Thank you. I did not understand that from the wording of the document about the plans only going to the design review committee and not actually coming before the planning and zoning or city council separately, or how to, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically a design review committee, especially if it's not binding, it's just advisory, wouldn't it simply review the site plans and drawings and put forth the recommendation for, conditions or something like that to the Planning and Zoning Commission and or City Council, who would then go through the, I assume, quasi judicial process of approving or not approving those plans.
So the site development plan process within the specific plan TSA overlay has been designed in a different way, in the fact that what we're trying to do is shorten time for development from plan submittal to actually being approved and getting something out of the ground. We're trying to expedite that process. And we believe that if basically we have set up the parameters for what we are wanting through the TSA plan document in terms of what the densities we're looking for, minimum and maximum, the height, the parking regulations, and then you're setting up the architectural standards and design guidelines, that if they can meet these things, that they should be able to go forward in a more expedited process. And this is, we're trying to gain kind of a competitive advantage on other station areas in the metro in this way. And we feel that if they meet all these things that we've set up ahead of time, that we don't need to spend lots of extra time going through these review processes, these formal legislative review processes. Now, there's of course there's the changes that might be made to the overall plan, and if they're big enough, yes, we have to go through those approval processes again. That are laid out as major amendments. But the development plan review process, if they're meeting all those things that are in the specific plan in terms of the standards that you set up in terms of height, density, parking, and then all of those architectural standards and guidelines, we are trying to get away from long-term legislative approval processes.
Thank you so much. That was very clear and helpful. And now I understand why you're proposing to include a city councilor and a planning and zoning commission member. Makes much more sense. Thank you.
Kate Townley?
I think this may have already been answered. So it's basically we're setting up a situation where we have use by right, and here are all the parameters in which you could develop in this new zone district. New zone district for this area, but then adding essentially an extra step to ensure that the development in that area meets the desired design that we're looking for. So it removes the legislative process from it, but also still ensures some design guardrails for what we're looking for. So this particular area, that's what's going to differentiate it from any other MUB1. There's the use by right part, and then also this overlay that would have the additional design review, but not a legislative design review type thing, unless that was like some sort of major amendment. Just checking that I'm still following it all.
I think that's pretty well said.
Okay. Nancy, I see that from the public, Michael has his hand up, but I think the time for the public questions is over. Am I correct in that?
Yes, they are allowed to have 3 minutes, and once you move into staff questions, unfortunately, the public is not allowed to testify again.
So Michael, we heard from you previously. We're not trying to ignore you. Please come back on July 7th with your more of your questions. Okay. What? So do we need a motion to, let's see here. You want us to have a motion to continue this public hearing on July 7th for case number 2021-003. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
This is a
Go ahead.
process question with the continuation of the hearing. So public forum is closed, but we'd be able to reopen public forum at the July 7th
Yes.
or no? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're going to basically do this meeting all over again on July 7th.
We won't have a really long staff report, I don't think.
Right. We won't have that, but yes.
So I guess I have a question. Do we, I'm not trying to avoid it or anything, but do we have to do the continuation? I mean, is there actual reason why we shouldn't be moving forward with this now? I mean, I've heard a couple concerns. I feel like we've addressed most of them. John's been gracious enough to give out his email and phone number. I mean, thank you. Is there a real reason that we want to continue this? And if that's the case, I think that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're not just punting this down the road for no reason.
I think the thought process is that we want to be as transparent as possible and to allow more public comment in a couple of weeks would not hinder the process, but allow more public to participate.
Yes, I would second that. And I also would add in that I still feel, there are things that were asked tonight by some commissioners that need some more looking into to give them some good answers.
Right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Nancy, would you like to call for the vote?
Yes. Ms. Townley,
Yes.
Ms. Donaldson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggerty,
Yes.
Ms. Brown. Judy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Fuller,
Yes.
Ms. Lepelski,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Chair, if you would indulge me while we move into opening the public hearing on the second case, I'd like to share my screen for the public that is still here with John's contact information. Is that okay with you?
That would be fine. Yes, please
Okay.
do.
Thank you. We can still proceed with opening the public hearing with this on the screen if you like. I'll leave it up for a little bit.
So now I would like to have a motion to open the public hearing on case ZON 2020-02, the amendment to the official zoning map. Do I hear a motion? Is everybody gone to sleep?
Can I clarify, what are we reopening? Maybe I'm missing that in the agenda.
There are two cases before us tonight.
A motion to,
Motion? Oh,
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, could you call the roll to open the public hearing on case ZON 2020-02?
Sure. Ms. Townley,
Yes.
Ms. Donaldson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggerty,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
yes.
Ms. Ms. Fuller,
Yes.
Ms. Dopolsky,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
Yes.
All right, public
Okay.
hearings now open. John, I would need to swear you in again for this case. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name.
John Voboril, Senior Planner, Community Development Department.
Thank you, John.
All right, I have the privilege tonight to also present case number Zone 2020-002, amendment of the City of Inglewood official zoning map to rezone City Center Inglewood from PUD Planned Unit Development to MUB1 Mixed Use Central Business District, and adoption of the Inglewood TSA Specific Plan Overlay District. I have here in my hand proof of publication on June 10th in the Inglewood Herald. It was also published, the notice was published on the city website June 2nd through June 22nd, and a neighborhood mailing was mailed out to all properties and addresses within 1,000 feet of the subject area the week of June 7th and 11th. Let me begin to share my screen again here. Oops. So the community development staff requests the Planning and Zoning Commission review, take public testimony on, and forward to City Council a favorable recommendation for amendment of the City of Inglewood official zoning map to rezone City Center Inglewood from PUD Plan Unit Development to MUB1 Mixed Use Central Business District, and adoption of the Inglewood TSA Specific Plan Overlay District. Once again, we will follow the same format as last time. Staff will report, public testimony, commissioner areas of concern for staff, and motion to continue public hearing to July 7th, 2021. Recommendations for findings of fact for this case. That case number Zone 2020-002 is brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing by the City of Inglewood Community Development Department. That notice of the public hearing was published in the Inglewood Herald on June 10th, 2021, and that notice was provided to the Inglewood City Clerk to be posted on the city's website from June 2nd through June 22, 2021. The notification letters were sent out to all property owners and addresses within 1,000 feet of the proposed city center-based rezoning area and the proposed Inglewood TSA Overlay District area the week of June 7-11. That Inglewood Community Development Department staff held 7 Planning and Zoning Commission study sessions on the proposed Title 16 UDC text amendments and regulatory parameters for a new transit station area overlay district area based on a 2-tier quarter-mile and half-mile radius from the Inglewood Light Rail Station platform bounded by Hampton Avenue on the south, Santa Fe Drive on the west, Eastman and Floyd Avenues on the north, and Bannock and Acoma Streets on the east. That the proposals to rezone Inglewood City Center from PUD Plan Unit Development to MUB1, an area generally bounded by Hampton Avenue on the south, Santa Fe Drive on the west, Eastman and Floyd Avenues on the north, and Elaty Street on the east, and adoption of the Inglewood Specific Plan Overlay District generally bounded by Hampton Avenue on the south, Santa Fe Drive on the west, Eastman and Floyd Avenues on the north, and Bannock and Acoma Streets on the east are in conformance with the Inglewood Forward Comprehensive Plan and the Inglewood Downtown Matters Plan of the development. And finally, that the proposal to rezone Inglewood City Center from PUD Planned Unit Development to MUB1 Mixed Use Central Business District, generally bounded by Hampton Avenue on the south, Santa Fe Drive on the west, Eastman and Floyd Avenues on the north, and Elaty Street on the east, and adoption of the Inglewood Specific Plan Overlay District, generally bounded by Hampton Avenue on the south, Santa Fe Drive on the west, Eastman and Floyd Avenues on the north, and Bannock and Acoma Streets on the east, should be adopted as an amendment to the City of Inglewood official zoning map. In terms of previous commission action, October 20th, 2020, Dan Premba was in attendance to discuss the SKB and L&L Partners agreements and the proposed rezoning strategy. And then that was followed by 4 follow-up study sessions where we went and looked at the MUB1 text amendments and worked hard on the TSA development intensity regulations. On March 2nd, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission chose to close the study session hearings and schedule the neighborhood meeting for April 27th. And on June 8th, 2021, the Title 16 UDC text amendments and Inglewood TSA specific plan document was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Case number zone 2020-002 returns the Inglewood City Center area base zone designation to its previous base zone district designation of MUB1 Mixed Use Central Business District, rescinding the current City Center PUD planned unit development. Staff recommends rezoning the original City Center planned unit development back to its previous MUB1 zone district designation, which would control the types of land uses that are allowed to be developed. And that is outlined with a black outline on the map, just east of the blue star from Santa Fe to Elati Street. Case number zone 2020-002 also establishes the TSA specific plan overlay district covering Inglewood City Center and portions of MUB1 base zone district located east of City Center, stretching to Bannock and Acoma streets. The Inglewood TSA specific plan overlay district is intended to allow the city to facilitate more intensive and high quality transit-oriented developments within City Center and the area east of City Center bordering the historic South Broadway area. And that is depicted here. The boundaries, the overall boundaries of the TSA include both the yellow and the pink shaded areas. The yellow area is designated as the quarter-mile tier for the development intensity regulations, while the pink area east of Elati Street is considered to be, has been designated as the half-mile area tier. The vision for the Inglewood TSA specific plan begins with Inglewood 4 of the 2016 Inglewood Comprehensive Plan. The vision outlined in the comp plan is complemented by the vision laid out in the recently completed Inglewood Downtown Matters Plan of Development. In terms of the off-Broadway corridor, the comprehensive plan calls for encouraging more housing in and around downtown and Inglewood City Center by creating a minimum height and density. It also calls for the development of a financing district such as a downtown development authority and a combination of TIF capability and mill levy without blight or eminent domain. For the Inglewood Station City Center area, it calls for strengthening the retail street at City Center by improving visual access from both Hampton Avenue and Inglewood Station and adding additional supportive uses. Secondly, calls for creation of a master plan for Inglewood City Center and downtown that looks to reconfigure vehicle access to transit and parking and to increase the user's exposure to retail and enhance the streetscape. Thirdly, it calls for the attraction of a retail anchor with appropriate incentives that counterbalances the historic downtown. And fourthly, if the city functions and offices are relocated, strive to place them in a more central position between City Center and downtown, reinforcing the link between the two. And the Downtown Matters Plan of Development features similar policy statements under the guise of economy and jobs, public space enhancements, and placemaking, mobility and transportation, and land use. At this time, I have wanted to end my oral presentation for this case to amend the official zoning map. And we now will go into public testimony. And for the record, I would like to state that we have received a letter from Pamela Beets, resident of Cushing Park neighborhood, distributed to the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, that is opposed to the rezoning of City Center Inglewood and adoption of the TSA specific plan overlay. And at this time, the P&Z chair will call real-time participants to testify.
So, I'm sorry, Colin is still in the meeting. If you would like to address the amendment to the official zoning map case, I would need you to unmute again, and you can, you can testify on that topic. Colin, are you there? Okay. That's all we have, Chair, for public.
Okay, well, that means that it's up to the commissioners to ask questions. If you would raise your hand so Nancy can call on you, that'd be fantastic.
Colin Haggerty.
Thank you. I generally am in favor of this amendment of rezoning, but can we do that before we get everything else cleared up and cleaned up? I mean, is that separate enough process to do that, or do we kind of need to get that first step taken care of and then we can move on to the actual zoning map change?
Very good question. Dan Prema kind of asked this question a while back, and basically my answer was to him, well, you need to have something to rezone to. And so currently today, the TSA overlay district, we could rezone to MUB1, but we wouldn't have had made the necessary, we hadn't made the MUB1 zoning amendments to visitor accommodations or the retail, restricting the retail to requirement, ground floor commercial requirement to only those certain blocks of Broadway. And that would be fine, we could do that, but we could not rezone to the TSA overlay because that currently does not exist until you approve it and make it so. And so I would, there is a reason why these are in a certain kind of order, and I would recommend keeping them in that order.
John, if I could interject real quick, would you mind stop sharing your screen while we are in question and answer, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Kate Townley is next. Thank you, John.
Thanks. I just had a couple things. One was just a point of clarification. I believe I don't know if it was the last one of the slides, you were talking about the connection between Inglewood Comprehensive Plan and what this rezoning would do, and mentioned something about creating a financing district and a downtown development authority. And I just wanted to clarify that by rezoning this area, that doesn't create a financing district or a downtown development authority. That's a separate desire and goal within the comp plan, and this zoning would help support that. But by rezoning, we're not doing that. So if you can just clarify that.
That is correct. You are not creating, by making these text amendments or making amendments to the official zoning map, you are not, those actions are not inclusive of creating a DDA financing district authority. However, there is a relationship to them in the fact that the DDA financing district will be very beneficial and will be probably most likely be very critical to any redevelopment that happens here at City Center.
Thank you. And my other question has to do with the current zoning as a planned unit development. Could you speak to what process would need to happen if a citizen or a developer or a city council member that may be two very, very different needs or whatever, but what process they would have to do in order to change allowable uses, change density, change height requirements, and things like that. So basically, if we were to not make any changes to the zone and kept it as a PUD, what sorts of processes would need to happen if you wanted to make any changes to that site as it is?
So one of the things when we were looking into the PUD as it is today, and then thinking about other types of zoning to facilitate redevelopment, we found that the PUD is very constraining in the fact that it requires all property owners to sign off and agree to the changes. And that adds quite a number of additional property owners that may not have all the same interests. And we felt that that might be not helpful to making this, expediting this process. And we felt that we would be better off following a more city structured and city driven process. And so we eschewed the PUD, we eschewed trying to amend the PUD. And so we opted for this strategy to rescind the PUD and go back to the original MUB1 zoning designation, and then apply a more prescriptive TSA overlay district on top of those regulations.
Thank you.
Chair, I do not see any other hands.
I do not either. So, John, just essentially what we're trying to do is, this is sort of like the last piece that needs to fall to make this whole process of redeveloping city center and the whole part of Inglewood from light rail station up to basically Acoma, I guess, a much more fluid and easy, less time consuming process. Is that what we're trying to get at? And this is the final piece to do that?
Yes, I think we're trying to establish a better sandbox to play in than we currently have today. Right now, with the PUD in place, there's lots of restrictions and there's lots of potential players that could muddy the waters. And at the same time, in the rest of the area, in the MUB1 zone district, we feel that although those regulations have been in place for a long time, they're not necessarily going to give us what Dan was calling for, which was the comparable regulations that make us competitive with other station areas. And so that is why there's an impetus on creating the TSA overlay area as well, because it's going to help us in some regards with being more competitive with other station areas. But also at the same time, it's going to give us some regulatory powers through the design standards and guidelines that simply don't exist today with the MUB1 zone district. And so it kind of gives us, I think it gives us a better sandbox than the best of both worlds, in the fact that we can get more density here, but we can require a lot higher quality as well.
Okay, this is a crystal ball kind of question, but how soon do you anticipate some developers will be coming in? Maybe this is a question for you, Dan, will be coming in to actually start developing this stuff?
Well, a lot is hinging on the rezoning, and then the next big.
Can I interrupt? I think Nancy might need to.
Thank you for the reminder, John. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and position.
Dan Poremba, Chief Redevelopment Officer within Community Development, City of Inglewood.
Thank you, Dan.
I was just going to mention that the rezoning is a big contingency of anything happening under either the preliminary development agreement or the framework agreement. So from a redevelopment perspective, we have to get it done. The next big thing is the Downtown Development Authority debt authorization question in November. That's still a question for City Council to authorize putting that on the ballot for the EDDA voters. I would say that our meeting today with SKB was very encouraging. They were actually talking about, in addition to their own first project, bringing in 2 other vertical developers who would start alongside them. So we could be in a situation where we had 2 or 3 vertical projects going at the same time. And that's probably like a 2023 groundbreaking. So that I would say is very positive. And then the framework agreement with L&R actually puts them in a position to then immediately market the Office Depot and Harbor Freight site as a major multifamily site too, and that one could go fairly quickly. So we're trying to line some stuff up here that could, create a lot of activity, but the actual groundbreaking is probably another, call it 18 months to 2 years away. But it potentially, once it starts, there could be a lot of activity. But, and then to the issue that you all are talking about, the goal is really to take this political uncertainty out of the situation. Inglewood kind of has a reputation that, in spite of some very positives in terms of entitlements, there's kind of this reputation that every time a project gets to city council, it becomes a policy question. And the policy, frankly, comes down to growth and change versus no growth and no change. And that's not, what should be evaluated as you're looking at individual project entitlements. So I think this approach gets past that, and then connecting it back to both planning and zoning and city council through the membership on the advisory committee kind of takes the suspicion of what staff is doing out of the picture as well. So it seems like a pretty good approach.
Okay, I know the hour is getting late, but I think we heard clearly from the public, and I think, Carl, you forwarded an email to staff. But I think we heard that perhaps there needs to be more additional public outreach that affects more than just the people within 1,000 feet. Are there any plans to, or what are the plans to get the word out for a potential July 7th meeting?
So we also did forward this announcement to our communications department, and they used their social media channels to also spread the word. And it did sound like there was Miss Joanne who did hear this maybe from next door, it sounded like to me. And so we would plan to do that again, is to blast that out again that way. I'm not really thinking there's going to be that much value in trying to send letters out again. I think I'm feel pretty confident that they got their letters, and a second letter isn't going to move the needle.
Okay.
I would just add, there's more public outreach planned. For example, we're working with SKB and Triba. There's a big kind of public outreach function planned on July 27th, I believe it is, to really talk about the redevelopment planning process from the developer's perspective. Then there'll be another meeting similar to that, probably in late September, early October. So there's a lot of burden on SKB to reach out to the public and educate them about the actual development plan as it's evolving.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I need.
I think Carl has
a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carl.
That's okay. Everybody overlook me all the time. So.
No, I was getting my piece of paper to look at. Sorry, I wasn't looking at my screen.
Zoning changes are pretty much building requirements on what they can build, where they can build, stuff like that. What's going to happen is we're going to have developers come in here and build developments, and then they're going to sell it in a couple of years to an investor. And was the zoning changes have no control over the investors after a couple of years. Once things built, it's built. I mean, if it's to code, it's done. But is it like code enforcement or what would keep, we're looking at a huge project here, and it's gonna be our downtown area. The skyline's gonna change, and there's gonna be many, many people down there. Is there any regulations on after 2, 3, 5, 10 years? What's going to control the quality of the buildings there?
Yeah, I would answer that, Carl, just by mentioning, I'm getting some feedback here, but we've talked about contractually, you know, our master agreements, if you will, with SKB and LNR have a good amount of control. As a matter of fact, they probably gain the city some control that it does not have now. Then each individual buyer of a project site, it's envisioned that they'd enter into a development or a covenant with the city that would essentially create limitations that run with the property, if not contractually, also in terms of recorded, you know, rights against that property. So there'll be more opportunity for us in a development context to create long-term control through these than we have today. And that's something that we're having a lot of conversation with both SKB and LNR about. So.
Kate has her hand up.
This is kind of a silly question, but I was just curious why this is a case number 2020 instead of a 2021.
So I think when, you know, we have our community development administrative staff, they kind of sign these numbers, and we began this in 2020. We began with the study sessions with October, and we may have even kind of talked a little bit about it beforehand. But so the case originally has we started in 2020, and then I think later on it kind of became clear that there's going to actually be 2 cases to it, and that there is going to need to be a rezoning case as well as a typical text amendment case. And so then we were already into 2021 when that was kind of that aha moment came. And so we feel we can't go back and retroactively assign a number from 2020. So we just took the next number that we had for 2021.
And Nancy, if I'm not mistaken, we need a motion to continue the public hearings until the 7th of July. Is that right? Continue both of them? Did we already do one?
We did one for the first case. We will need one for this case. So the public hearing would stay open when we adjourn on July 7th. So yes.
Do I hear a motion?
I will move to continue case zoning 2020-02 to July 7th.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, could you call for the vote?
Sure. Ms. Townley?
Yes.
Ms. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Haggerty?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller?
Yes.
Ms. Lepowski?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
And Chair Austin?
Yes, we do have 2 visitors, though. We have a dog there at Kate Fuller's, and we also have a junior member, it looks like, at Diane's house, but I'm assuming that I'll vote yes too.
Motion passes.
Both junior members.
That's our junior members, yes.
She approves.
The backup ones, yes. Okay, now it's staff choice. Anything further from the staff?
I have nothing.
Oh, thank
Wait.
you.
Nothing from me.
Just thank you again for your, oh, I'm sorry.
Nothing from me.
Brad?
Not this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your time.
Nancy?
I just wanted to thank you again for your patience with my technical difficulties.
We all have them. It's not a big deal. Dugan, you're up. Attorney's choice.
I have nothing else for this evening.
Okay. Commissioner's choice. I'll go around what I have on the screen. Kate Townley,
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Diane,
Yes, if you can hear me over the sound of the toothbrush. I just had one question. I saw in the Englewood Citizen that there might be an Englewood Market. Is that something anyone could share any info on? It says, be on the lookout for more information. Are we getting a farmer's market? What is this?
I'm not aware. I don't know any details of that. I think there's a farmer's market event or two planned for this summer, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I also don't know of any plans.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything.
Who puts together the Englewood Citizen?
I'm happy to follow up on that with our communications and our events coordinator and send everyone an email if you'd like.
Well, that'd be amazing because I have had more than one neighbor ask me about it. And I said, I don't know, but I'll ask.
oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Noel?
I believe there were two mentions of documents or presentations that members of the public had created. If those were shared with staff, would we be able to get a copy of those? I guess that's a statement more than a question, or a question and a statement. But thank you all. I appreciate all the work that goes into putting together your presentations for these.
Yeah, I think one was Josh Goldstein. I think I've seen that one before. Nancy?
Yes. Yes.
Do we have the Josh Goldstein proposal for the redevelopment of city center that we could share to or send all the members of the commission? And I don't know what the second one was.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I believe we sent that before, but I'm happy to send it again.
Okay.
Noah, what was the other document?
I believe the gentleman from McMullins mentioned a document. Maybe that hasn't been shared with anyone
right.
at this point in time, but if it had, I'd be curious to see it.
Okay, we can follow up on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right on that Michael did that. Yeah. Judy? Colin?
Couldn't hear Judy, but I've got nothing. Thank you.
Carl?
I'm not sure, but maybe that is the Englewood Marketplace, the shopping center. I'm not sure about that. I did remember seeing that, but I didn't think too much of it. One thing is meeting in person. Is there any time frame on doing that, or is there any work going on that? It'd be nice to get rid of some of the technical glitches, but those are hard to avoid. You get them and you can't do anything with them. But I've seen the two council meetings that have been in person, and they actually had a lot of visitors on this last meeting yesterday. Most of it was dog parks, but if there's any, I don't know if there's any meeting in-person scheduled for the planning and zoning or not. We have more members and it's going to be harder to do. So I'm not sure if it can be done. So just wanted to bring that up.
So I can address that. City council is going to be talking at the July 6th, 5th, one of the 5th or 6th. I think it's the 6th meeting to talk about boards and commissions and the possibility of meeting in person or continuing online like this. So stay tuned for that. As I mentioned last meeting, we will not have access to the community room or city council chambers. So it would leave us with one of the third floor conference rooms, which we can do, but it will be very cozy if council decides to go back to in-person meetings for boards and commissions. So it's coming up on their agenda, so stay tuned.
Sounds to me that might not be possible for our July 7th meeting if we're wanting the public to be there. If we'd be in such a cozy spot, I don't know.
It will not. The July 7th will need to likely remain as a virtual meeting.
Okay. Okay, Kate Fuller?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. And Meg?
I just wanted to follow up, Noel, your question. We did receive an email from Nancy on March 29th that's called Information from Carl City Center Alternative. And I believe that that's one of the reports you were asking about from Goldstein, Jay Goldstein, if that's helpful. And
Yes,
I have
that
nothing
is. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? I have none. Thank you all so much for your patience. I know this was a very long meeting. But the next meeting, we will not have to go through, as John mentioned, we don't need to go through the whole PowerPoint presentations, and hopefully we'll be able to adjourn a little bit earlier. So again, thank you all for your patience and have a great evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I do want
Thank you.
to welcome Meg
Bye.
Yeah.
for your first full time.